All right, Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal Emac, joined by my friend Greg Ehrenberg on a Saturday morning. A pairing so good they don't allow it to happen all that often. But with no NFL this weekend, aside from the Pro Bowl, we're shaking things up. It's always fun to work with not new partners, but different partners. Greg, welcome to the Saturday Strategy Show.
Yeah, actually, so the first shows I did here, remember, it was you and I doing a baseball show on Sunday mornings. We had arguably the worst time slot that exists on the channel is Sunday morning baseball shows. Those are the first ones I did here, which is also, now we come full circle, because there comes a time, Emac, in a boy's life where he has to become a man and stand up for what he believes in. And here we go. Emac 2024, officially casting my vote, 2024, Emac for president. If you want somebody with political experience, that's not going to be Emac. But if you want somebody who's experienced life, somebody who served in World War I, somebody who helped, bring the country back together during the Civil War, somebody who's helped pay his bills by doing hand favors for homeless guys for $5 under a bridge just to pay his mortgage. This is a man who's experienced life. This is who we want for President Emac 2024.
Excellent. Well, I wholeheartedly accept your endorsement, Greg. That means a lot here. That means a lot. Yeah, I get to do the weekend shows because I can either stay up late or I can drink beer, but I can't do both anymore. So I'm usually up at the crack of dawn anyway. So yeah, I get all the weekend shows. But those were some fun times. I mean, imagine back then we didn't even have like 10,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, and we've just been exponentially flying through here. So that is a lot of fun. We appreciate all of you that watch us. That makes us able to continue to do the free shows here. So please do hit that like button and subscribe as well. We're marching towards 75,000 subscribers. That is really cool. We've got a lot of fun stuff planned. And of course, we've now branched out into multiple YouTube channels. We have the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, and we also have the Odd Shopper channel, which was formerly Awesemo Odds, but that's where we're covering a lot of betting shows, etc., as well as some nice evergreen videos that explain to you how to do sports wagering, which is particularly helpful for all of the states that are coming online now. We just got New York online a couple of weeks ago. Louisiana followed. We're just hitting the 1 year mark here in Virginia. But if you're a resident of New York, you can do the sports betting stuff. Definitely just check out the pinned link here in the YouTube chat, or down below us, there'll be a link that will take you to the page to look at all the different offers we have, including a bet $10 to win 200 if any team scores a touchdown, and you can get a free NBA jersey if you bet $100 with Caesars Sportsbook. So that is going to be a lot of fun there. There's also a risk-free bet with MGM for $1,000. Now, some of these are going to be, it might sound a little confusing or tricky promos. They're generally not. The books want to bring you in. They want to grab you quick. The one thing I regret is only signing up for the DK Sportsbook here in Virginia, because I missed out on a lot of the other deposit bonuses. I got a really big one there that I wanted to work my way through, but I ended up making several $1,000s just on the deposit bonus. And that's something you want to look at, because one, this will go away, but two, some of these are confusing. Not a problem. We also have a video that's on the website, and you can find it on the YouTube channel as well, where Alex breaks down how to utilize these different bets. What is a risk-free bet versus a money back bet, etc. And these are some good things, because usually the bet 1 to win 100, those are that you see all the time on Twitter and all that. Those are not necessarily the best offers. But if you go look at our Odd Shopper channel, or if you look at Awesemo.com, just search sports betting, and you'll get the Alex video. It'll explain the best ways to get these different sports books bonuses, because they won't last forever, but they are very, very helpful. How is it now that you're officially able to use mobile wagering, Greg?
I mean, I wouldn't say. I live in New Jersey, which is the first state.
Oh, I keep thinking you're in New York.
So yeah. I've been doing it for forever.
Well, I didn't know if, like Mr. Rossa, you knew a guy who would take care of the booking these things for you. But I forgot you were in New Jersey. But it's a lot of fun, and definitely follow Greg. He's very, very good on Twitter about throwing out some of these that are imbalanced and futures, wagers, etc. So very fun world out there for everybody. So we're going to get into our slate here. We just have 5 games today. Shockingly, there's no show directly after us. That's a first for the last 20 weeks or so that we've had here on the Saturday morning shows. We do have the MMA live before lock after us. That'll go, the MMA locks at 4:00. So they'll probably go off around 3:00. And then, of course, we have the deeper dive NBA show as well as live before lock with an extra 30 minutes. You'll be getting Matt LaMarca and Greg for a bonus 30 minutes on top of that. And Eitan and Rinpak are going to be the ones doing the deeper dive. So we'll talk a little bit of Yahoo as we work through these. They are the sponsor of the show, but let's kind of jump into our stuff here. 5 games. We have Phoenix heading into our nation's capital. They are 7.5-point favorites here, taking on the Wizards. Landry Shamet and Cameron Payne are both out, as is Bradley Beal. Washington last played on Wednesday. Phoenix last played on Thursday. They both do not play again until Monday. It's a true island game. Greg, what are we doing here? And what the hell's going on with the Wizards? Are they going to implode? Are we going to see Spencer Dinwiddie moved? What do we got in store for us?
Yeah, are you talking about today or the trade deadline? I don't think we're going to
both, because the trade deadline is the 10th. It's right around the corner here. I'm looking forward to the Josh Engelman live trade deadline show. But I got excited because I haven't actually talked to you in quite some time, and I know you and Josh follow the NBA, just all the little ins and outs. So let's start off with today's game, but then we'll finish it up with your thoughts on Spencer Dinwiddie getting traded, because we have another big trade that we'll talk about tonight impacting the game, one of the late games. So sorry,
Spencer Dinwiddie getting traded would be news to me. That is not something I think is in the mix at all. It's not something anybody has reported on. There's no rumors about it. And the Wizards seem to be set on trying to compete now. Bradley Beal, like you said, he is out for tonight. So at least as far as this slate goes, it's not the best matchup against the Phoenix Suns. The Suns are probably the best team in the league so far this year. They also play really good defense. So Spencer Dinwiddie, the individual matchup isn't great, but he sees enough of a usage bump with Bradley Beal out that I still think it's worth getting to some shares of Spencer Dinwiddie, $6,100 over on FanDuel. On DK's at $6,800. It's a little more difficult of a price point for me to get to, but certainly on FanDuel, he's a pretty strong play. Kyle Kuzma is somebody else who has benefited a whole bunch when Bradley Beal's been off the court, but I'm not really looking to play Kyle Kuzma at $8,300 over on FanDuel. Kind of the inverse of Spencer Dinwiddie. We've got Kyle Kuzma favorably priced on DK at $7,700, and then a little bit too pricey for me in this matchup at $8,300 over on FanDuel. So those are the two guys individually that benefit the most without Bradley Beal. And then we have the front court situation where I don't think Daniel Gafford is going to be in the rotation tonight because the expectation is that Thomas Bryant is going to be back in the mix. So we saw for a little while, it was Bryant, Gafford, and Montrezl Harrell. All three of them were splitting center minutes. And then there was a game where Gafford just out of the rotation entirely. But then the game after that, Thomas Bryant got hurt. So my expectation is that we're going to see Daniel Gafford go back to 0 minutes. It's probably going to be Thomas Bryant starts and plays like 20 minutes or so. And then Harrell picks up the bulk of the rest of the center minutes. But it doesn't make either of them too appealing.
Yeah, suddenly it's an embarrassment of riches there at the pivot position here in Washington, which so many people have been injured. They brought in Gafford last year via the trade to sort of shore things up. There was never really a plan to end up with Montrezl Harrell, but of course he came over as part of the Russell Westbrook trade, and then of course you have Thomas Bryant, who missed essentially a full calendar year with his knee injury. So now all of a sudden all three of them are healthy. Makes things a little off, especially with Beal out. They tend to look to Harrell a little bit more. Now, the matchup tonight will be a little bit different with DeAndre Ayton out there, but Harrell tends to be out there for just being one other person that can contribute on offense, which helps open things up there for KCP, Dinwiddie, when Beal's out, and of course Kuzma as well. So it's a very different team this year in Washington than what we've been used to. They're playing at a league average pace for the most part, league average defense, which is a far cry from where they were last year, playing at the breakneck pace with one of the worst defenses over the last 3 years. Big change there from their new coach, Wes Unseld Jr., coming in to change things up. So it's not quite the gimme that it used to be. Still a solid matchup to take players against Washington, but not quite the automatic 15% bump across the board for the opponents. Speaking of the opponents here, how do you want to approach a slightly thinned out backcourt, I guess, here for Phoenix. Washington has been it's hard. They've been frisky in some games, and then they've just died on the vine in others. I can't get a read on this team, but if they're able to keep this close, we've seen Chris Paul play some heavy minutes because there is no campaign to just put him in, and now no Landry Shamet, et cetera. Elfrid Payton, not really the answer. So the interesting thing we've seen with Paul, while he's not doing nearly as many drives as he did in the past, et cetera, he's out there late in the games, but he's leading the league in assists. So he's just out there, facilitating the ball, and Devin Booker do all the heavy lifting. But if we can get upwards of 32 minutes from Chris Paul, all of a sudden you're looking at somebody that's going to flirt with mid 40s, low 50s fantasy points. What do you want to do specifically with any of the Phoenix players here?
Yeah, I just think the price is a little bit too high. So you mentioned Chris Paul, the minutes he's playing lately, but he's $9,900 on FanDuel and he's $9,800 on DK. I have him projected for low 40s fantasy points. It's just not nearly enough fantasy points for me to want to play him when his price point is so inflated, because this is the most expensive Paul has been on DraftKings in a meaningful amount of time. It's the most expensive he's been on DK all of this year. And even if I scroll back to previous years, it's more expensive than he was all of last year, more expensive than he was all the year. But I mean, you have to go back to when he was in Houston with James Harden, games that Harden was out, to find Chris Paul this high of a price tag over on DK. And then over on FanDuel, where he's 9,900, I get that he got up to 10,000 last game, but even with that in mind, this is a lot more than I typically want to pay for Chris Paul. Like you said, he's had some big games, and you could see that he maybe gets himself into the low 50s fantasy points, but that's just kind of okay at his price point. I don't think there's a lot of upside left here at that kind of salary. So if I had to roster either Paul or Booker, I have a slight lean towards Booker, but neither one of them are really priority pay up options for me. The only guy I really like getting to from the Suns right now is DeAndre Ayton. And something else to consider also is, due to the time that Ayton was out and they had other players missing in the front court, Jay Crowder was out, a lot of these players are pretty priced up. Cam Johnson's expensive. Mikal Bridges is expensive. And now with Ayton back, it doesn't really make sense to play them at their salaries. But Ayton is priced down on both FanDuel and DK. We haven't seen him play full minutes yet since coming back from his injury. He missed, about 2 weeks? And he came back. He played 28 minutes against the Nets. Last game, he only played 24 minutes against the Hawks. But I do think that we're going to start to see Ayton play regular minutes. And as long as we don't get any kind of word that he has a strict minutes restriction, I like getting Ayton here, especially as a contrarian play. He's only projected around 10% ownership on both sites.
All right. I do want to point out on our sponsor site, Yahoo, you get a nice chance here to get Chris Paul in at a reasonable price of 40. Devin Booker is at 39. So those guys are both seeing low double-digit popularity here, or rostership, as they like to refer to it, on Yahoo. So that's something to check out. You can also check out our free tools here. Today, we are offering up the NBA projections for free, as well as the MMA fighter rankings. So that will be interesting for those of you that are not yet behind the paywall. A couple of the prime sports that are going on today on somewhat of a light sports calendar. We do have the Olympics taking place now. No DFS Olympics, but Greg, I have an Olympic joke for you.
Okay, hit me with it. I'm excited.
All right. How do you keep Canadian bacon from curling in the frying pan?
Tell me, Mac. Tell me.
You take away their little brooms.
Oh my goodness! That's quite the joke there, Mac.
My brother said he has a little animated emoji of himself, so he likes to tell stupid jokes and send them to me. So that was the one awaiting me this morning. So.
There's nothing that's just the end of the joke. There's nothing else that happens.
That's it. It's more fun if you know him, because he's laughing at the punchline before he even delivers the joke, because he knows it's so bad that makes the joke that much better. But since I just saw that before the show, that was top of mind.
Any other good ones?
There's usually what's green and white and sits outside.
You're gonna have to tell me again. I can't get it.
Patio furniture. That's the St. Patrick's Day joke that I get from him every year, or some variation of that. It's usually variations on a theme. There were some fun Groundhog's Day ones earlier this week, but the jokes are so bad, thank God I forget them. and then he just recycles them the next year, and it makes me laugh.
That's the benefit of once you get up to being Emacs age, you just don't like, you hear the joke and you think it's new every time. So that's good.
Yes, indeed. Well, that part's good. The rest of it, bad. But we're gonna move along here. Anything else from this game that you would like to point out?
No, we could move on to the Miami Charlotte game.
All right, Miami Charlotte. It is Miami coming into Queen City, 3.5 point favorites. We have a 225.5 implied point total here. Charlotte has Jalen McDaniels questionable with an ankle issue. He has missed the last 7 games. Miami will be seeing Omar Yurtseven coming back. He's been in the health and safety protocol, missed the last 5 games. Jimmy Butler probable with the toe. I saw you called him out on that show, and they ended up playing triple overtime there. Yet somehow he was only had the 5th most or 6th most minutes played in that game behind all of the Toronto starters. What a wimp. And then he had to take the next game off, Greg. So curious your take there on Mr. Jimmy Butler. Questionable here because this is a back-to-back for Charlotte. They did lose last night, 102-101 at home to the Cavs. We saw heavy minutes for their starters. You got Terry Rozier at 40 minutes. You've got Bridges coming in at 37, Ball and Plumlee at 32. Hayward played just 29. You had the only guys off the bench were Oubre, PJ Washington, and Caleb Martin. Martin is dinged up now. He's got an Achilles issue, so he may be out for this game. And then you've got let me see. Sorry, let me get back down to my notes here. So my one question for you, and I tried to find stuff on it this morning, but LaMelo Ball did not play the last 9 minutes of that game. Now, the unit that was in there ended up erasing a 15-point deficit. You had a couple key 3-pointers there from PJ Washington that brought him back from to almost looked like it was going to go into overtime until they fouled spotty foul there for Kevin Love. Wasn't in the bonus, but it didn't look like a shooting foul, but they ended up giving him, so we did not get overtime. But Ball didn't play at all for the last 9 minutes. Do you think that was just because the bench was coming back and playing well together? Is there anything to be concerned about Ball, or were they just saving him because they knew they had a game tonight, and lo and behold, somehow the bench unit brought him back?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Part of it, I think, is it's because they had the back-to-back situation, but then also because the bench brought them back. We've seen this a few times with the Hornets this year. If they're in a game and they're trailing by a lot and the bench brings them back, we've seen Boyega, the coach of the team, he just kind of leaves the bench. And something else also is we've seen at least once or twice this year where LaMelo has gone to the coach and said, hey, Ish Smith is playing really well. Keep me on the bench. Leave him in. So it's a little bit of all that. But in terms of how it affects the minutes we should expect from LaMelo Ball today, it doesn't. He's still going to play his full minutes. But the issue is still, it's a really difficult matchup against the Miami Heat. And it's a healthy Miami Heat now, at least in terms of the guys that matter the most. You know, we've got Jimmy Butler back in the mix for them. We have Bam Adebayo is back for the Heat. We've got Kyle Lowry back. So they've got the core of the defense intact. There are some lesser players who are questionable for the Heat. PJ Tucker, Max Strus, Caleb Martin, those guys are all questionable to play. We'll talk about that in a second. But the issue from the Hornets side of the game is just when you're playing against a healthy Miami Heat team, they're difficult to score fantasy points and real life points on. So if I could only play one guy here, it would probably be Gordon Hayward if he doesn't have any kind of minutes restriction, just because he's priced down so much. He's $5,900 over on DK. On FanDuel, he's $5,600. Really, really cheap salary for Gordon Hayward. So that's something that's appealing to me. There's a lot of ownership going to Terry Rozier on FanDuel. I think his price is favorable at $6,700. I just don't want to play him in a third of my lineups like the field is right now, or about a third. He's projected for 28% ownership. So I think he's a little bit too popular. LaMelo is a little bit too expensive for me. Gordon Hayward is the best overall play here as long as he doesn't have any kind of minutes restriction.
All right. Gordon Hayward over on Yahoo is 25. He's small forward eligible there. Looks like he's going to be sub 10% for his popularity. You've got Terry Rozier, just $2 more. He is shooting guard eligible, which is kind of helpful at Yahoo. That's getting him into about 25% of lineup. So that's, while a tough matchup, we have just 10 teams in our player pool tonight. So he's kind of in that neutral area of play, and he did play a lot of minutes last night, but it is somewhat appealing that we do get him at shooting guard over on Yahoo for tonight. And then the interesting players that are popping up somewhat for Miami is Bam Adebayo. Now he's center only on Yahoo. That's a tricky spot because, like most sites, the center position generally has the best point per dollar options up and down the salary list. So it becomes a little more of a decision point, like FanDuel used to be once upon a time before they had the multi-position eligibility. So Yahoo, we can play two centers, but we don't have multi-position eligibility. And when we utilize that utility spot, if you're using that from someone that is in an earlier game where there's some questions in the late game, you can kind of paint yourself into a corner when it's coming down to late swap because it's not nearly as flexible as the other sites. And it also, their pricing is not in that incremental pricing. So it's another layer. So if you plan ahead for these things, the advantage is definitely in your court. And that's one of the nice things over there on Yahoo, in addition to their minimal management fees, aka reg. But looking here at the Bam Adebayos, the Jimmy Butlers, you've got Yurtseven coming back. Clearly, he had his moment there while Adebayo was out, but he's going to have to work his way back into the rotation. Even when he was healthy, he sort of fell out once of regular minutes. Of substance once Adebayo was back. Is there anything aside from Butler, Adebayo, maybe a Lowry or a Hero tonight that you would consider from the Miami side, or are they all kind of just neutral plays at this point?
So on FanDuel, Kyle Lowry might be my favorite play on the slate because I don't understand why he's not just crazy chalk in this spot. Kyle Lowry's 5,800. That's an egregious price point for Kyle Lowry. He also has a matchup against a Charlotte Hornets team that is bad defensively and plays at a really fast pace. So the total for this game is the second highest total on the slate. The Miami Heat have the second highest team total of the night, only behind the Milwaukee Bucks. So I think this is a really good spot. The only caveat is we just have to make sure that there's, no real restrictions for Kyle Lowry. He played 25 minutes his first game back, which I think could be something that's giving people pause. Kyle Lowry was away for a really long time. He missed almost a month with a personal issue. We don't really have any information on that. We don't know what the personal issue was, but it was really bizarre. We're just like Kyle Lowry every day, listed out. And we never got an update on that. And not that it's any of our business what it was. It was certainly concerning to see him miss that much time with a personal issue, but now he's back. And I think a couple of things happened his first game back. Number one, he hadn't played in about a month, so they were easy on his minutes. Number two, also, we don't know what it was that happened with whatever the personal situation was. But the other thing, too, it wasn't a competitive game. The Heat won the game by 17 points. So I think we take all that into account, and I would expect Kyle Lowry to play pretty close to full minutes. And he's been priced over 7,000 for basically the entire season on FanDuel. He's 7K on DK. The 5,800 price tag on FanDuel is something I really want to take advantage of, especially when it looks like the field isn't really getting there. So FanDuel specific, but I really, really like Kyle Lowry there.
Right. Giving a little hat tip here to the chat. I offended some Canadians with my joke there. Caused the stream to buffer because the joke was so bad. We're getting some thumbs down. Never tell jokes again. EMAC, we're losing all of the votes, et cetera, et cetera. Paraphrasing some of these. And then Sammy Telesco comes in and he says, with the super chat, the jokes are worth $1, but your intel is worth much more. I love Awesemo, love the crew, the Buffalo War Pigs. So Sammy has had some nice runs there in the Fred VanVleet fan club, getting some free Awesemo memberships here, month-long packages, because that's the prize that we give away. Toronto had the back-to-back Thursday and Friday. They don't play again, I think it's Monday or Tuesday, so you guys will have to wait for that next one. But that's one of the ways we give back at Awesemo here. It's always fun. We started out that little gimmick when Fred VanVleet was coming off the bench. The name always made me laugh. I like to call him an elite player. He and Frank Mason were about equivalent to each other back then. Now Fred VanVleet's an all-star, and Mason, I think he was the MVP of the G League last year, or the pandemic year. But wow, pretty cool that Fred VanVleet is an all-star. And then let's see, I've got Jordan Klein, member at Awesemo for 11 months here, using his monthly membership chat. He says, what is the best thing about Switzerland? I'm sure he will tell us in just a moment. What do you think the best thing about Switzerland is?
I don't know, Jordan. Tell us the punchline.
We'll see. The bar has been set very low.
It's very charitable for Sammy to think your jokes are worth $1. That to me is That's high praise.
Well, you know what Jordan doesn't know, but the flag is a big plus. Okay.
Did he give us the punchline yet?
I think that is the punchline. We'll have to see. All right. We've got T McBee's there in chat. All sorts of people out there. All right. Anything else from our second game here for you?
We'll
be a little more professional.
We're talking about so I think this is a really good spot to go back to Jimmy Butler. So once again, it's just a matchup against a Hornets team that plays at a really fast pace. They don't play good defense. So Jimmy Butler, to me, is once again somebody who I want to roster here. As much as I've made fun of Jimmy Butler for missing games, when he's out there, he generally plays pretty well. And last game, it wasn't a very good fantasy effort. But once again, the same thing I said about Kyle Lowry. The minutes were down for Jimmy Butler because the game was not competitive. So we only played 25 minutes. They won by 17. They didn't need more minutes out of Butler. They didn't need more minutes out of Adebayo. Didn't need more minutes out of Lowry. Look at the fantasy games for Jimmy Butler leading up to that game. 47, 79, 58. So there's been a lot of upside games for Jimmy Butler, and we're getting a slightly reduced price point from last game because of the limited minutes last time out. So good spot to go back to Jimmy Butler in this matchup.
All right. We are at the third game of our 5. We've got kind of a late balanced slate tonight with the games. This is the featured game, so it's the Fulcrum game here, but this is the ABC featured game. It's the Knickerbockers in Los Angeles taking on the Lakers, and then we have a pair of 10 o'clock games that we'll get to. For Los Angeles, Carmelo Anthony will be out for this one. He is dealing with a hamstring issue. LeBron James still doubtful with his knee injury. For the Knicks, this is an island game for them. They play in Utah on Monday as they continue their road trip. You've got the Lakers that are playing at the final game of a 3 games in 4-night stretch. They host Milwaukee on Tuesday, so they'll get a little bit of a respite after this one. How are you feeling about Anthony Davis? What is the over-under on his first trip to the locker room, minutes-wise? 9-12 in the first quarter?
Let's see. I would say, well, it's going to happen at some point. There's very little doubt about that. I'm actually going to say he's going to give us a scare. He's going to go to the locker room to take a piss right before the game starts, and it's going to open up, and he's not going to be on the floor to take a tip. We're all going to take the tip. We're all going to panic, and then he's going to come out and emerge from the locker room and have a big game. He's going to be really popular today, particularly on FanDuel right now. We have Anthony Davis projected for 33% ownership. I kind of think it's warranted, though. He's played pretty well since coming back from injury. So the games that we've seen from Anthony Davis since coming back, also keep in mind that in recent games, there's been no LeBron in the mix. 62, 45, 57, 64 fantasy points for Anthony Davis. He's looked pretty good physically, at least, based on the eye test, he's been playing really well. So I like it in Anthony Davis a whole bunch here. We don't have Jokic on the slate to pay up for. We don't have Doncic tonight. So I do look at AD as one of the premier pay up options. To me, him, and let me look at my exposures right now in the initial build I've made. Yeah, the guys I'm paying up for the most frequently today, it is Jimmy Butler and Anthony Davis as of now.
Really?
I mean, is it?
No,
who else would you think it would be for today?
I guess as you have taken the shall we say the aggregated approach of looking at the whole player pool. I've just been isolating on different players, so clearly big picture has escaped me at this point. Plus, I was answering a horribly tasteless joke in chat, so which I will not repeat on air.
Let's see. Let me look for it.
Yes. But anyway, sorry, a little bit off there because I was also trying to see if there was any NBA birthdays today as well. There are 3 active players that have their birthday today. None of them are playing tonight. So clearly no birthday narratives for us. The interesting thing about the Lakers is that we are seeing Malik Monk get significant field goal opportunities here without LeBron James. He has had to pick up the scoring. It's sort of been hit and miss, but he has 5 straight games of double-digit field goal attempts. He has started the last 4 in this 5-game stretch. He's got 19, 10, 19, 13, and 13 field goal attempts, which is very helpful because most of them are from behind the arc. So when they are going in, we get nice games from Malik Monk, who has also been contributing a little bit with the assists and rebounds. But if his shot is not falling, we get disasters like we saw 2 games ago where he had 15 fantasy points. But on either side of that one, he had a 40 fantasy point game and a 50 fantasy point game. Are you feeling any love towards Malik Monk on the main slate? Is this one of those extended slates like Yahoo does, from the 8:30 on games, doing their player pool, or pardon me, their unique strategy instead of segmenting the turbo slate with just a section? But when Yahoo does their later contest, that whatever start time they use, they go through the end of whatever other players are on the slate. So that's a lot of fun there. Is Malik Monk coming in at $20 someone who's interesting to you? Taylor Horton Tucker seems to have fallen out of favor recently, even without James and all the extra minutes. He's barely cracking 20 minutes per game. What are you seeing from some of the secondary Lakers? And then, of course, we'll talk about Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, so talking about some of the secondary Lakers, I think Malik Monk is just kind of appropriately priced at this point and appropriately owned. He's $6K on DK. I have him projected right around 30 fantasy points. Over on FanDuel, where he's 6,600, it's kind of hard for me to get to that kind of price point on him at the projection I have. He's also not going to be that popular over on FanDuel. DK, though, like I said, about appropriately owned, appropriate priced, 17% ownership. When he's 6,000, I have him for right around 30 fantasy points. So if you have him as a last spot to fill out a lineup, that's fine. It's not an issue, but he's not someone I'm going to go out of my way to target either. As for the other guys, it's kind of hard to know what to do with them. You mentioned it. Taylor Horton Tucker's kind of fallen out of favor. And then you just got guys like THT, Austin Reeves, Stanley Johnson, Dwight Howard, Avery Bradley. It's just a bunch of guys that are playing minutes in the low 20s that don't have that much fantasy upside. So for me, it's just so much of the production from this team comes from Anthony Davis, comes from Russell Westbrook and Malik Monk now, but he's already priced appropriately, that there's not too much I'm dying to roster on this team outside of Anthony Davis and then Russell Westbrook and Malik Monk to a smaller extent.
All right. I just realized what's throwing me off on our show today, because I'm like, why this is not seeming natural. I'm used to listening to you and or Lindquist. I haven't done a show with you in so long. I keep thinking like, oh, I've got this on in the background and I'm building my line.
No, you're here. You're part of the programming, Mac.
I need to be aware of that. Yes, Eric, you are. Eric, who the hell's Eric? Yes, you are steering the ship today. So time to re-engage and not get caught unawares there. That kind of makes sense. That's pretty funny. But what's not funny is the deal we are getting from Yahoo. See what I did there? Trying to do a professional segue while I could. So we've partnered with Yahoo this fantasy season to bring you guys some great offers. If you check out the link below us here in the YouTube description, you can get to a link that will get you into Yahoo if you're a new user there by coming in on that link. When you create your account and make your first deposit, Yahoo's going to give you $10 in site credit. And then the moment you put your money, not their site credit money, your money into a paid contest, be a quarter, be a 50 cents, be $1, they're going to send us an email with your contact information. We're going to get you 30 free days of Awesemo premium content by sending you a coupon code that will make that free for you. So that is a great deal over there on Yahoo. They also have the $30,000 Saturday baller tonight. And then, of course, for the Super Bowl, they have the $1 million baller coming in there. We have lots of Yahoo-centric content on the site, both in front of the paywall via some free articles and analysis. And then our tools are calibrated for Yahoo as well. It's a lot of fun over there. They have lower management fees or rate than the other sites. That's a significant difference. There was a fun contest last night, single entry $10 contest that was the Slate Starter podcast sponsored contest. And we're also giving away some Awesemo year-long and 6-month and 3-month subscriptions at the top of some of those contests as well. You can tell that because the Awesemo name will be in the name of the contest. When you see that, usually we are adding a prize to the first few spots at the top. So additional value for you over there on Yahoo. Russell Westbrook here. trust is a word that we don't really want to use with Russell Westbrook. He has at least been better from his field goal success rate. He's actually at this point of the season a tick above his career numbers. So while he is much maligned, he's about what he always has been here. He tends to do better, obviously, when LeBron is not on the court with his ball dominant ways here for Westbrook. What are you thinking about Westbrook here going against a bit of a slog in this matchup against the Knickerbockers?
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about some of the other guys to look at on the Lakers outside of Anthony Davis. You know, Russell Westbrook, he's more favorable looking on FanDuel than he is on DK. FanDuel is 8,500, DK is 9,700. But the priority for me here is going to be Anthony Davis. He's been the much better fantasy producer of the two. And the upside for Russell Westbrook has been a little bit more capped versus what we've seen in the past. Do you remember the last time Russell Westbrook scored over 50 fantasy points?
Oh, it's probably been about a month.
December 28th against the Houston Rockets.
Ooh.
And I believe that was a game that neither Anthony Davis nor LeBron James was in. Yep. So it's hard to find fantasy upside from Russell Westbrook as of late. He just has not really, he hasn't done it versus what we've seen in the past. So it's been twofold. The downfall of him as a real life player is also started to carry over to his fantasy game, because we've seen in the past times where he hasn't played well in real life, but still he generally puts up fantasy stats. It just hasn't been the case this year. We're looking at, like I said, we have to go back to December 28th to find a spot where he had over 50 fantasy points. On FanDuel, you could still play him at 8,500, but it's kind of hard for me to get behind the 9,700 price tag on DK because he just hasn't played well from a fantasy standpoint.
That's a good call out. So let's think of a different way to look at it. Would it change your mind somewhat if we weren't holding him measurable against prior Russell Westbrook performances, and it was more along the lines of, hey, here's a guy that just based on raw volume most nights should, where one of the other stars is out, should approach 40 fantasy points with some upside, even though it's been not quite the attainable upside we've seen, as you pointed out, with 6 weeks since his last 50 fantasy point game. But more often than not, he is at least getting to 40. It's a reasonable floor. But I think perhaps we need to look at it through a different lens. Does that, and I know you go a lot, but you have one foot in each world. You look a lot on the numbers. You do your own projections. You utilize all the Awesemo tools, but you also watch a boatload of games. You understand different nuances, rotation patterns, things that may be emerging before they're caught up in the different projections or in the different collective thought of the DFS NBA echo chamber here. Should we look at like Russell Westbrook as a pumped up Malik Monk who's just going to get a bunch of stats, a bunch of volume that is kind of going to get him there? Does that have utility on a slate like today? I think you know what I'm trying to say here, but I'm not.
No. I have no clue what you're trying to say.
Oh,
if I'm being honest.
So
I don't know what the question is.
The question is, hide the name on Russell Westbrook.
Yes.
Look at someone that consistently approaches 40 fantasy points with almost metronome-like consistency. We don't like how he gets there, but he gets there. Does that have utility more from a more raw points perspective that people may be holding biases against him from past performance, so they're not really looking to him?
No, and he doesn't even get to 40 fantasy points consistently. He had 32 last game, and he scored under 40 fantasy points. He scored under 33 fantasy points in 3 of his last 6 games, and he's 9,700. So I don't even think if he's 9,700 on D, I don't even think 40 fantasy points has that much utility, nor do I think that's what his floor is. He's pretty regularly. In fact, I think if we look at his last month, he's had considerably more games with less than 40 fantasy points than over. So that's a no for me. I don't find Russell Westbrook that appealing at $9,700 on DK.
Absolutely fair. I like him at 37 on Yahoo. That's sort of where I'm poking around with what I'm looking at. That is reasonable price on Yahoo, only because there's some $10 and $11 players that we have that really tend to free up some of the salary cap here. So you could start to look for some of these raw points. He does have 39 or more fantasy points in 5 of his last 8 games. Most of those obviously were without LeBron James. That's sort of the lens I'm looking at through this. But yeah, absolutely, I would agree. This is where we say, hey, look at a lot of different sites. Analysis for one site does not always lift and shift to another. And sometimes, especially when you're looking at players that for a particular day may not be great on FanDuel or DraftKings, they might be on Yahoo, or they might be on some player props, etc. Because we're looking at things with a different scoring system, a different salary cap constraints, position constraints, etc. So it's always good to say, there's multiple sides to each of the players' outcomes here, and then it gets framed even more succinctly is not the right word. It gets fractured even more depending on the different sites or styles of games that you are playing. All right, the Knicks side of things here. I'm not really a fan of anybody except on Yahoo. Julius Randle at 31. That is his second lowest salary in the last 3 calendar years. He was 29 earlier this week, and I went back and looked for that. I think the last time he was below like even $34 or $35 was when he was with the Pelicans, because he had those nice runs there previously with the Knicks where he was just literally doing everything. He has more help this year. His performances have been somewhat hit or miss. But oh goodness, $31 on Yahoo. That seems like a great bargain.
Yeah, and not quite as crazy as $31, but we do have reduced ownership on Julius Randle on DK at 8,700. And I think 8,700 is a pretty solid price tag to look at for Julius Randle. Also, he went on a stretch where he really struggled with his efficiency. His usage was down for a little bit. Seemed like he might have came out of it a little bit last time out. He played 37 minutes in the Knicks last game. He scored just under 50 fantasy points. So I think 87, a nice little buy low for Julius Randle, because even in some of these recent games where he struggled, his salary was 9K, 92, 95, 97, 95, 91, 92. So now I think we're getting to a spot with Julius Randle, like, okay, let's buy back in now that his price has fallen below 9K, because based on what we've seen from him during his time with the Knicks, I would expect his salary goes up by about $1,000 or so within the next month. So I think Randle closer to appropriately priced at 92 on FanDuel, 87 on DK. I think there's some upside too, especially after it seemed like he broke out of his funk a little bit last time out. So Julius Randle, I understand you also really like that price tag on Yahoo, which $31, that is a great salary on Randle, but I feel the same about him on DK as well.
All right. As we branch out, there are a lot of inconsistencies here with the rest of the Knicks. They are mostly healthy. You've got Derrick Rose is really the only key piece who is missing. Who knows what? I don't even know why they have Cam Reddish. That seems to be a waste for everybody's time. But you've got some Alec Burks here in at $12. You have Kemba Walker. While very disappointing with 3 single-digit fantasy point performances in his last 4 games. He is now $10 on Yahoo. Not all $10 players are created equal, but wow, that's pretty low. You've got Evan Fournier, whose shot has been falling. We know that will go away at some point, and he'll have some disastrous games, but he's coming off 3 straight excellent games. But again, he's been shooting at about a 60% clip there. Trust is not the right word. Is there anything that makes you say, I don't hate this guy if he lands in my 150 lineups for the rest of the Knickerbockers here?
For Evan Fournier, you mean?
Fournier, Walker, Burks, any of the floatsam and jetsam?
Not really. So we've seen such a different rotation from Tom Thibodeau this year, where in the past, he's always been somebody who relies really heavily on his starting lineup and just plays all his starters massive minutes. That's really only the case for Julius Randle and RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett, who is a little bit underpriced on FanDuel, he's going to be a popular play at 6,200. I don't mind that, though. I think RJ Barrett a little bit underpriced on FanDuel. Julius Randle a little bit underpriced on DK. As for the other Knicks players, though, I can't project any of them to play 30 minutes because it just becomes really spread out outside of those 2 guys. Mitchell Robinson, Evan Fournier, Emmanuel Quickley, Kemba Walker, Nerlens Noel, Alec Burks, Quentin Grimes. These are all guys that are going to play 20 to 26 minutes. And that's just not enough playing time to spark any kind of upside. Like you said, every once in a while, there's those outlier games where Evan Fournier, it's like, oh my God, what happened? We're 3 minutes into the game and Evan Fournier is 4 or 5 from the field somehow. And he's got like 13 fantasy points in a minute. But by and large part, those games happen like once a month and he sucks in every other game. So there's nothing that I really think we could count on or is any kind of consistency from the other players on the Knicks. Barrett on FanDuel, Randle on DK, nothing else is all that appealing.
All right, let's head on to our twin late night hammers here. First one we're going to look at is Milwaukee at Portland. Milwaukee is going to be without George Hill again. I think he's missed a couple games in there. Portland is going to be without Damian Lillard, who is dealing with his core injury. Nasir Little is out for the remainder of the season with a shoulder injury that I think he just had surgery on. And then you've got Larry Nance Jr. questionable with the knee issue. He's missed the last 16 games. I'm not counting on him coming back. And then we had a trade here between Portland and the Clippers. Portland will be receiving Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a second rounder. They dealt Norman Powell and Robert Covington. It is not expected that those three players that are incoming will be available to play tonight. We're looking at a pretty thin Portland crew that did play last night as well here. So the big question that's already been floating around in chat, blah, 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 Giannis blowout. Can we play him? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so obviously we can play Giannis, but here's the issue I have. And one of the reasons I'm not really getting to him a whole bunch in the build I have right now, he's really expensive. And at least as of now, there is not that much value on the slate. So the opportunity cost of paying up for Giannis when he's $12,100 on DK or over on FanDuel where you have Giannis at $11,400, it's a little bit easier to get to on FanDuel just because of the salaries tend to be a little bit less restrictive and he's also cheaper. But even so, I'm getting to more of, like we said before, Anthony Davis and Jimmy Butler, just because I'm finding it difficult to find the salary to get up to Giannis. Now, if the slate locks when the slate locks 8 hours from now, if players get ruled out and there's more value, then yeah, Giannis becomes more of a priority. But right now, I think the opportunity cost to rostering him is pretty steep just because we don't have enough comfortable value to spend up to him.
Absolutely agree with that one 100%. And that's the puzzle could change at this point. So a lot of times people ask questions, hey, why do you guys do these early morning strategy shows? Well, one, you guys watch them, so that's fun. Two, it shows how we read a particular slate. And this is incredibly invaluable for when you need to make last minute decisions, or if news is breaking in the middle of a slate after there are no more shows, or if you are playing some of the sub slates and there's not slate specific content for that. We break down a lot of this stuff because it's things you can kind of file away. You can sort of see how we're approaching different scenarios, because even if those scenarios don't necessarily come to fruition on today, there's a decent chance they will in the near future or on some of the sub slates. So that's something that's very, very helpful here. And Greg has an excellent point here. Yeah, Giannis does look too expensive tonight. And even if this is a game where the Bucks win comfortably, he's still probably going to play around 30 minutes. We've seen him average in these games, 1.8, 1.9, even 2 fantasy points per minute. He'll kind of get there for you, but he's not out producing his salary. And it is at a lofty level, especially on DraftKings and FanDuel. Yahoo, 55. They usually don't go higher than 57. So it's one of more near their apex pricing. But even on Yahoo, he's not overly enticing today, just because there are better players living in that mid tier that, I'd rather than go Giannis and a scrub, I'd rather take two guys that have a decent chance of getting 40, 45 fantasy points than hoping Giannis gets 60 and then whatever other scrub I have gets 20 or more. That seems like a longer shot to go to. So in a vacuum, absolutely, Giannis is phenomenal tonight. We'll see. It could change. He's going to be one of the top 3 projected points producers here. But what happens with the rest of the salary or the rest of our player pool is going to dictate a lot of what we do. Is there anybody else, assuming everybody's healthy and everything goes forward, for the Bucks that intrigue you? How are we feeling about Drew Holiday, Middleton, etc.? Any of their other players?
Middleton and Holiday are both a little bit too expensive for me, both on FanDuel and DraftKings. Middleton 82 on FanDuel, Holiday 75 over on DK, Middleton 79, Drew Holiday that same 7,500 price tag. I both them projected for low to mid 30s fantasy points. It's just not really a points per dollar projection that I'm generally going to get somebody like that into my lineups, especially because they're picking up ownership in the teens for both Middleton and Holiday today. That's going to be a no-go for me. But who I do like getting to is Bobby Portis. He's been priced down to $6,100 over on DK. On FanDuel, he's $6,000 and has power forward and center eligibility. So Bobby Portis is somebody who has been a little bit inconsistent as of late, but we know that there's still fantasy upside on Bobby Portis. He also played 35 minutes last game, which is the most he'd played in quite some time. So I think there's playing time upside for Bobby Portis. And once again, reduced salary, one of the cheaper salaries we see on him for the season. So Bobby Portis is actually the guy I'm getting to the most from the Bucks tonight.
All righty. Turning our lens around here to the Portland side of things, we are looking at pretty tight rotation here. We've got McCollum, Nurkic, of course, are going to be fine options here. You've got Anthony Simons. He is going to be a nice option as well. We get into the shall we say, the quicksand, the danger lies ahead with Dennis Smith Jr., CJ Ellerby, Trendon Watford, Ben McLemore. Those are right now marginal value options, but 3 of the 4 are $10 on Yahoo, so they start to come in play over there. What do you like from Portland here, starting at the top end? It feels like McCollum, Nurkic, Simons are going to be core plays for us tonight across the different sites.
Yeah, so you mentioned that trade, and here's the situation now is it's not that many active players for the team. And even some of the guys that are going to be active at the end of the bench, they're low production guys who are probably only going to play a few minutes, not that high of usage guys. We're talking about, Trenton Wofford, Tony Snell, Greg Brown, Kelvin Blevins. So with that in mind, you just have to assume as long as this game stays relatively competitive, which is, a pretty big question mark, but assuming it does, and I can't just outright assume there's going to be a blowout when the spread is only single digits for this game, I think we have to assume that McCollum, Nurkic, and Simons all play massive minutes. And the 3 of them are probably the only guys that are really going to take up the usage in the possessions for the Portland Trailblazers. So I like getting to McCollum, Nurkic, and Simons all today. We'll see what happens with Larry Nance. He's currently officially listed as questionable. He appears to be nearing a return. I think the most likely scenario is Nance plays with a minutes restriction. If that happens, it kind of takes any of the value out of the front court there. But if he's out, I think we could look at somebody like CJ Ellerby as a viable value play. If Nance plays, it's just going to be the McCollum, Nurkic, Simons trio for me.
Yeah, and if we look at it last night's box score, Nurkic ended up with a little bit of foul trouble there, 33 minutes. McCollum played 38. Simons played 37. CJ Ellerby came back from his injury, played 27. Snell, a not so empty 36 minutes. I'm sure those will be empty minutes for him tonight. Ben McLemore had the empty minutes, 18, 0 for 7 from the field, 2 personal fouls with a rebound. Way to go, buddy. Way to go. But he is going to be floating around there, particularly on the late slate. But this looks like a pretty top heavy crew here. And the interesting thing is this is one of those where it's not like they're going to run these guys into the ground kind of thing because they're trying to win. Portland they're in the 10th spot right now in the Western Conference. They're punting on this season. You've pointed out several times that you'd be surprised if Damian Lillard comes back at all this year. Someone was asking why would they make this trade? Essentially, and I closed out on the article, but essentially after this season they'll have 4 players under contract: Lillard, McCollum, and I can't remember if Simons. Pardon?
Bledsoe and Nurkic.
Bledsoe, yeah, without the new guys and Nurk. So it's going to be kind of Eric Bledsoe. Of course, you're going to bring him up. We have they're going for a reset here, and it's just they're going to be punting this in, but there just aren't going to be enough bodies out there to absorb a lot of these minutes. These guys should all see 35. I don't think anybody's going to have to really see more than that. Because they can just donk this game off if they want to. Last night it was relatively competitive, so we did see, not that they want to win, but they're at home, might as well win in front of the home fans and lose those other games there. But I like all these guys as core plays here on this one. What did you think of the overall trade? Sorry, I've got to hit mute because my wife.
Yeah. So, by the way, you were still talking when your mute was hit. But that aside, we see Emac now playing with his dog. Is Emac going to come back? Who knows? He's left. Emac has left the building. So who knows? Maybe I'm riding solo to finish the show. Oh, nope, he's back. Emac's question was about the trade. I don't see how it makes sense for Portland. I get they're trying to save salary. They're saving themselves some money across against the tax what they're paying. But I have to think they could have gotten better value out of Norman Powell. They got nothing for him essentially. So I understand that they're trying to set themselves up better for the future. Eric Bledsoe does have a shorter contract than what Norman Powell has, but this doesn't really benefit them for the future that much. It doesn't help them in the present. It could potentially make Damian Lillard pretty upset because the team just sucks now. I don't think Dame returns this year. I think that's really the key to this trade, is that it kind of indicates to me that, hey, Damian Lillard has been battling this abdominal injury all year. He's just underwent surgery. They're hoping to reevaluate him in a month or so. I just don't assume he comes back at this point. But in terms of this season, it's going to do nothing for Portland. Great trade for the Clippers.
Yeah, and so kind of turning the lens around that there for just a second, then we'll get in our last game. But we don't have a show after us, so we do have a moment here we can talk about this. Do you think that now with this trade, we're gonna see a return for George or Leonard? It seemed like touch and go that they may just keep them out for the rest of the year and not risk additional injury to two guys that have been hurt a lot. But now we've seen potential return dates pop up for these guys in April, which is something we hadn't seen previously. Do you think this trade helps the chance that we'll see them on the court again this season?
No, as soon as the trade happened, Ty Lue in an interview said that Kawhi is probably not playing this year. Kawhi, I don't think is going to play. And then Paul George, it's just going to be based on whatever the scans they do, which I think he's set for an update in like a month or so. He tore his UCL. That's generally leads to Tommy John surgery for pitchers in baseball. The thing is it's basketball. You don't necessarily, he might be able to play with a compromised UCL because he doesn't have to throw a baseball. So we'll see, but depending on what the scan reveals, if there's enough damage and it hasn't healed for Paul George, then he's going to have to undergo Tommy John surgery, and he won't be back till next year. But I don't think the trade has any impact on Paul George. It's just going to be, does he need surgery or not?
All right. And then for some of the people in chat, I hadn't read through everything, but last night when I was looking into this trade, a couple of the sites had started posting potential return dates, just without the blurb, just now these guys that have been out for a long time are popping back up. So I just wondered if there was a chance they were going to come back on this one, because suddenly the bottom portion of the Western Conference is, not quite as tough to make the playoffs as we have seen in prior years. You've got this whole scrum. It feels like it's the Eastern Conference between, Minnesota and both LA teams. And, now Portland's kind of waving the white flag. Sacramento doesn't really want to win. We'll talk about them in a second. Same thing with Oklahoma City. Houston Rockets, God only knows what they're going to do. Spurs are out of control. It's just this total mishmash down there. So you could end up seeing a team that says, all right, screw it. We're going to play. We're going to get through the play-in game. I mean, so we're looking at teams like the Minnesota and the Clippers that, even though they're not having great seasons and they're hovering right around 500, there's a decent chance they're going to get out of the play-in game mix. And this is just something that it was just kind of hard to calibrate after so many years of the specific teams just having sustained success here, Greg. So it threw me for a loop there a little bit. I was trying to figure out what the long game was for both teams on this trade.
Yeah, Portland isn't. I mean, even if Portland makes the play-in game, they're most likely not going to win 2 games in a row on the road. So I think they're punting on the playoffs.
All right, final game of the night. We've got some fantasy goodness here, I guess, because 2 teams going nowhere fast. You've got Oklahoma City, 6.5 point underdogs in Sacramento, a 216.5 implied point total here. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander likely to be out through the All-Star game or the All-Star break. What I've seen, he's dealing with an ankle injury. Aaron Wiggins out with his own ankle injury. He's already missed 1 game. We've got back-to-back here for OKC. They won last night in Portland, 96-93. All of their starters played 30 or more minutes. We saw Giddy and Baisley play 36, Dort 33, Mann 32. The Akite played 30. You've got guys coming off the bench for a few more. Kenrich and Ty Jerome were the other guys of note there. We probably won't see Mike Muscala tonight, but that means we may get Derek Favors. I mentioned that because there is going to be some nice contests for the 2-game late slate here. So that all of a sudden our player pool shifts from the main slate to where some of these guys are going to be viable here. Start us off with the OKC side without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander here. What do you like, and why is it Josh Giddey?
Yeah. So,
or is there anybody besides Giddy?
Yeah, actually, I mean, so I like Giddy a lot on FanDuel because there's such a big difference in his salary on FanDuel and DK. Giddy at 6,500 on FanDuel is way too cheap. 7,600, or I'm not sure if I said that correctly. 65 on FanDuel. He is 76 on DK. So DK is just kind of priced appropriately. FanDuel, he's much too cheap. But he's not my favorite play here because we were saying before there's kind of a lack of value on this slate. The only real source of value as of right now is these OKC guys because they're all cheap and this team's playing a pretty condensed rotation due to the players that are out right now. Isaiah Roby's on the injury report. Aaron Wiggins is out. SGA is out. Jeremiah Robinson Earl is out. Like you said, Muscala, he's probably not going to play today. Vic Krejci, who doesn't generally play a large role, but he's out also.
He hasn't played this year, has he? Krejci?
No, but once again, it's just guys
to your point.
It's just guys on the roster they don't have to go to. So they're playing this really condensed rotation, and then they're all cheap also. So when I'm running my lineups, just because they're the only cheap guys to get to, Diakite, Ty Jerome off the bench, Kenrich Williams, Trey Mann, Darius Baisley. These are all guys I get to in like 25 to 30% of my lineups because there's no other source of salary savings right now. These guys are all cheap that we could reasonably project to play in the neighborhood of 30 minutes. This is the source of value on the slate, is playing the OKC guys. If you want to pay up for anybody today, unless something changes on the injury report, you have to roster players from the Thunder.
Yeah, absolutely. And on Yahoo, it's even more pronounced where you've got Ty Jerome, Kenrich Williams. They're coming off the bench, but they're $10 each. They're going to play mid to upper 20s in minutes. You've got Diakite, who started a 4-year player, 5-year player for the University of Virginia. So he can kind of do a little bit of everything, but he looked pretty good last night in his start. He's at the minimum salary. He is, however, center only he is center on Yahoo, which does make it a little tricky to get him in there. But you've got Trey Mann at 12, Baisley at 15, Dort at 21. These guys are all cheap. Most expensive guy is Josh Giddey at 28. So he would be the one guy that they don't have to. Will they coddle his minutes on the back-to-back after seeing him play 37 last night? Is this like a 32-minute game for him? Because, I mean, neither team's really trying to win per se. That's my only concern with him.
So Josh Giddey this year, let's see, what has he done in some recent back-to-backs? So the last time they played in a back-to-back, played 33 minutes in both ends. Before then, he played, actually I haven't played a lot. Okay, here, a 34 and 30. No, they've been limited in back-to-backs at all this year. I don't think that's a concern.
Okay. That was the only real worry that I had. So if he's going to play about normal, perfectly fine for him in this situation with against another team that's not particularly going to be playing fervent defense here. On the other side, you've got De'Aaron Fox, who's questionable. He's missed the last 7 games with an ankle injury. Marvin Bagley is either in the doghouse or he's not healthy. Right now, he's not healthy, so he's missed the last 3 games with his own ankle injury here. Do you think either of those guys play? And what based upon that, how do you want to approach the Kings here as we wrap things up?
Fox has to play eventually, right? He's been a game time decision. But I mean, realistically, it's not like they're ruling him out in advance of these games. He's listed as questionable and then gets ruled out later in the day every time. And it's been going on for nearly a month at this point. So he first got hurt January 19th. And I don't think there's been times he's been ruled out ahead of time. Every day he's a game time decision and then gets ruled out. I think the most likely scenario is he plays today and just plays slightly limited minutes, which means that he himself is not in consideration because I want to play De'Aaron Fox in limited minutes, but also takes away a little bit from Tyrese Halliburton. So I think that if in the situation where Fox is out, Halliburton, particularly on FanDuel at 7,600, becomes a really strong play. If Fox is in, though, maybe a secondary option for Halliburton at 7,600, but he becomes much less appealing with Fox on the court because his production's been much less. Harrison Barnes is super popular right now. He's projected for nearly 30% ownership on FanDuel. I don't get that unless Fox is out, and I'd bump his projection. But as of now, I think a lot of the guys on the Kings are going over owned, but part of that's also because I'm projecting Fox in.
Yeah. I think the one I am curious to see what happens with is going to be Davion Mitchell. I mean, God, he ends up, some games he ends up starting and he just produces absolutely nothing. Other games, all of a sudden he's taking in the mid to upper teens in field goal attempts. Most of that's coincided with him moving into the starting lineup, but we saw him go games where he'd play 20, 25 minutes and take 5 or less field goal attempts. I know he's kind of out there a lot more for his defense, but man, if he's going to be putting up 25, 30 fantasy points at $11, $12 on Yahoo, that's a steal. They've got him up to 15 now. If you've got De'Aaron Fox back, that takes a lot of my interest away from Davion Mitchell. If Fox is out again, I'm comfortable with Mitchell at a reasonable price point there. Mitchell to me is not someone I want to work my night around leaving him in or out of my lineups if we don't have that information. He's kind of if I have spots when I get there and he's still left and Fox is out, then he'll land in my lineups. Whereas on the other sides where we have more flexibility, I'd probably start out with more Mitchell than Fox and then worry about getting away from Mitchell if Fox is ruled in. So again, this is one of those where when you're playing on multiple sites, you're going to have different strategies. You're going to have to kind of think through what you want to do. And then tonight's a really spaced out slate. We've got the slate starting at 7, a couple 7 o'clock games. You got that 8:30 middle game, and then you got the 2 10 o'clock games. So we probably won't have this information until halftime of that third game there. We'll still have it in time to react, but we're going to be down to just two games left, 4 teams in the player pool. So it's kind of interesting how we want to construct our lineups in this one. Any final thoughts for this game in general?
No, I think that pretty much wraps up this game and wraps up the slate.
Absolutely. You want to show everybody the cool t-shirt you're wearing for those that missed it at first?
Yep. So it is, we are casting our vote for EMAC for president in 2024. You guys could jump on the train, jump on the bandwagon, or get left behind. Everybody who cast their vote for EMAC will be getting, what did we say? The $2,500 check in the mail for everybody who votes for EMAC, and everybody else could go kick rocks.
Something along those lines. We're campaigning on the platform of a pizza in every oven. We're going to be nice to each other and no more lying. No more lying. Those are the things we're going to work through. We're going to rebuild civilization yet again with the word civility. But there we are. But with that, we're going to get on out of here. 3 more shows after us. You get the MMA Live Before Lock with Pete the Heat Rogers and Jason Floyd. And then you'll get the Deeper Dive and the Live Before Lock NBA style with a bonus 30-minute show there with the one and only Greg Ehrenberg, joined by Matt LaMarca, having some fun with us tonight. With that, gamers, I'm going to go work on the Pro Bowl premium article that I'm putting up for anybody that has any kind of Awesemo subscription. You got soccer only, you're going to have access to this. You got access to everything, you're going to have access to this. You have NBA only, you're going to have access to this. But the Pro Bowl is kind of a fun game. Not a lot of people pay attention to it, nor should they. But there are some strategies out there that we can use to our advantage. But I don't want to make it easy for everybody to get it. So that's just for users only. But with that, gamers, we want to say thank you to Tyler for producing the show, and thank you to Awesemo for letting us have a good time here. Hat tip to Yahoo. With that, gamers, good luck.